All right, guys, we are live to the world. Here we go, kicking off episode number 363 of This Week in Photo. Here we go. And welcome back to TWiP. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Joining me today to discuss some of the cool and interesting things in the world of photography are my good friends, Mr. Martin Bailey and Mr. Don Komarechka. Hey, guys, how you doing?
Hey, Frederick. Hey, Don.
Thanks for having me.
It's always good to have you on here. You're the wealth of knowledge for This Week in Photo. Now, that's not to say, Martin, that you are not a wealth of knowledge. Cumulatively, you guys humble me, also. So this will be a really good show. Some pretty good topics to talk about this week. Before we jump into that stuff, though, Martin, you've been running around like a crazy man. I've been following you on social media, and you've had people in your house making giant prints and all that stuff. What is going on?
Yeah, no, we did the first in-studio Pixels to Pigment tour last a couple of weeks ago. Went really well. It's a small, we actually do it in this room, so we can only fit 4 people in, but that makes it really personal. And the guys had a great time. We've actually set dates for the next one now, so August 23, 24, if anyone's in Tokyo. But yeah, it went great. We're looking forward to doing the next one now.
Nice.
But yeah, I'm plenty of stuff to be done. I'm sitting here trying to get a couple of articles for the Craft and Visions Photograph magazine done this week. A little bit of stuff that I probably can't talk about just yet, but like other exciting things going on. Sure. And then I'll be in Iceland in September. So yeah, we've actually got one place left open on that. I almost, when I'm talking about places being left open, I sometimes say one place free. And I'm thinking, oh no, someone's gonna jump on that.
Bad choice. Bad choice. So speaking of that, what if one wanted to join you on that Icelandic workshop? How much are they going to be plunking down?
That's a good question. It's just under 5K, I think, for 12 days.
Well, that's it. I could find that in the couch cushions. Come on.
Yeah. I'd need to check. I think it's just under. It's a shade under $5,000 for 12 days.
And you got one seat left to fill on that. And if people want to join in, they want to grab that last seat, where should they go to grab it?
Well, a short link that will take you straight there is mbp.ac/Iceland 2014.
Wonderful, awesome. All right, well, I'm sure after this episode goes live, you'll have an overage. So you can, if you have more money than you can handle, Martin, just feel free to just PayPal it over to me. I can.
Yeah, sure. That's fine. I'll do that. I'll just send some now anyway.
Yeah, just whatever you want. I'm not picky. Mr. Don Komarechka, always a pleasure to have you on the show. What's been going on in your world? I see from the show notes that you're out and about actually clicking that shutter button again. What's going on?
And I'm so excited for that. I've been, being a professional photographer is a lot about being a small business owner, and I find myself so often getting just caught up in so much paperwork, and you can't find the time to get out and shoot. And I've actually found that it helps me quite a bit to schedule. Okay, this day nobody is bothering me. I'm going out and I'm going to get some shooting done. And it becomes very therapeutic too. It's almost like that becomes my day off.
Yeah.
And this time of the year, it's perfect for infrared photography. All the leaves are on the tree, so I've been experimenting with that. Did some night shooting. We had, it wasn't much of a meteor shower, but there was one that was supposed to happen, and I got out and did some night photography on that night, and macro photography, water drop. It's all sorts of fun stuff, and some fun experiments too. I've been doing a bit of hands-on studying of the quality of artificial light. LED lights and compact fluorescence and all that kind of stuff to figure out, why bad light is bad, and what you can do to make the quality of light in your living space or for photo studios and that kind of stuff even better. So that's some fun ongoing research that keeps the gears working away.
What have you? So just without going too deeply into the quality of light stuff, what have you come away with some top line findings? From a portrait or people photography standpoint, we're always taught that, there's two main things, and that's the size of the light source, a couple of main things, the size of the light source, the intensity of the light source, and the color of the light source that, in varying degrees of intensity combined together contribute to make your quality of light. Are you seeing different things, or, what are you seeing?
Right, so I'm studying primarily the color of light, and
Mhm.
more than just the color, but the equality of that color throughout the entire spectrum. So, natural sunlight and incandescent light and even halogen lights produce a fairly even spectrum of light. They cover all the bases. They're not missing anything.
Yeah.
But some lights are missing things. Compact fluorescents are by far the worst. And in that case, our eyes work in some pretty mysterious ways. We average out wavelengths of light, and our brain computes that differently. So even if there's huge chunks of the spectrum missing, our eyes will still see that light source as white. But if you have a particular object that is reflecting primarily one of the lights, the spectrums that's missing from the light source, then your colors are going to get all screwy, and you're not going to get the expected results in your photograph. Or if you're looking at a print, for example, you're not going to see the colors that you should be seeing. So there's some pretty interesting things with that. And LED lights are now becoming more and more popular, more affordable, and so I'm digging into those too. And they're not perfect. They're a heck of a lot better than compact fluorescents, but I've got more studying and more different light sources to experiment with, and get some interesting results that hopefully I'll even be able to do some results cross-camera, like from different manufacturers, to see, okay, well, let's see how a top-of-the-line Canon versus Nikon versus anybody else cameras will perform in showing up, the exact same light, and how they replicate colors properly. And I've got all the stuff here to do that. So
Really cool. So what's the end result of this? Is it going to be a book, an article for a print magazine, blog post, Google Plus, what?
Well, I'm probably going to do a couple of articles on it. One that's sort of a tip of the iceberg kind of thing, where you get all the basics, and for the average photographer, the conclusion paragraph is the most important, and that'll give you the information to head on your way. And then I'll write a more in-depth one, and I'm not quite sure where that one's going to end up yet, but I've got some fun ideas.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, keep me posted. I'd love to help get the word out once you get the article and the analysis finished.
Will do. Thanks.
All right, guys, before we jump into the news, and we've got a lot of interesting news to talk about, I want to give a nod to our first sponsor for this episode of This Week in Photo, and that's our good friends over at Squarespace.com. All right, guys, this first story is interesting. I know it's going to be somewhat controversial. Maybe not. Let me read this with the little blurb that Bruce put in the show notes for us. So basically, he wrote in here, Nikon stock hit a 3-year low last week, and the recent financial results have prompted a reorg of the company. The company announced net income of 46.8 billion yen for the last fiscal year, missing its own forecast of 50 billion yen. Nikon projected a profit of 45 billion yen for the current year, while analysts estimated 48.5 billion yen. So, in their words, they're saying a reorganization. Actually, I don't know if this is their words, but this is also reported. It says a reorganization of its corporate structure to build a foundation designed to support sustainable growth and establish a more robust corporate culture is what they're trying to do, and by further solidifying its core businesses of imaging and precision equipment while enhancing its instruments and medical business. So, Martin, you're in Tokyo, you're in Japan, so you could probably throw a rock down the street and hit the Nikon HQ. When you see an article like this, or you see these numbers, along with the other sort of market forces that are kind of chomping at these companies, these top-end DSLR companies like Nikon and Canon, is this another point in the direction of, okay, the numbers are there and your days are numbered, or is this reorg like, okay, they needed to do this and now they're going to come out swinging, they're going to be slimmer, more nimble, and smarter, and less corporate lethargic? What do you think?
I would imagine that they're going to come out stronger. They're too big a company to just go under, and I imagine that the changes that they're going to make, or that they're making right now, will probably help them. I am surprised that it takes them so long to get to the point where they know they've got to change something. It's it's like Kodak. Just watch the photography world wash away from them, and I'm surprised that it's taken them so long. But I think that You know, they're not going to be in problem. We're not going to be seeing the Canon D4s come out in a few years' time or anything like that. You know, I'm pretty sure that they'll get through it. And also, for the sake of the listeners, $1 is 100 yen. So when you talk about a billion yen, it's about $10 million.
Okay.
So if we're talking the US billion of 1,000 million.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure that I think that they drag their feet on the changes a little bit maybe, but you know it's a big ship. Steering a ship that size is obviously going to take a little bit of thinking. So hopefully they're doing the right things, and I don't think that they're in danger. I think they're just doing the thing that they need to do to get through this and hopefully become stronger.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's like molting, right? The giant corporations have to go through this process of, every now and then you got to shut off the old cells and, to stay fresh, let the new layer of skin get oxygen and all that. Mm-hmm. But the story, the lethargy, for lack of a better word, of some of these large companies in the industry kind of reminds me of that story of the frog in the boiling pot. You remember that story? Where I think it goes like, if you put a frog in a pot of lukewarm water, it'll be happy. And then you put that lukewarm water on the stove and turn it up slowly, just ever so slowly over the span of several hours until it's boiling. The frog will never jump out of the pot because it's not perceiving the heat increase as dangerous. Whereas if you just threw him in the boiling water, of course he'd go crazy. But if you just turn it up slowly, he'll just stay in there until he's, of course, dead. Right? Yeah, so yeah. I kind of equate that to these companies where it's like, bit by bit, something happens and you don't pay attention to it. Oh, mirrorless is coming. Don't pay attention to it. All these different innovations are happening. Mobile phones are taking over. Don't pay attention to it until the water is too hot. And then you cry uncle and it's over. Don, do you perceive it that way, or am I completely off base?
Well, I think to some degree you're right, Frederick. You look at the point-and-shoot market, it pretty much doesn't exist now. I mean, there's some niche products out there that, fit certain bills. But largely, cell phones have replaced that entire market, and Nikon is not in the cell phone business. So, get rid of that revenue stream from them. Mm-hmm. Now, there is still some good products in there, but it's not going to be the workhorse that it once was for them. And you look at the mirrorless market, Nikon has their Nikon 1 series, and they've produced a lot of cameras and some lenses and accessories, and they've got a good platform, but I don't know if people are biting. When people look to that mirrorless market, they're looking more to the Panasonic or Olympus has some great ones, Sony as well, and those are the people that are really gaining market share in the camera markets. The traditional digital SLR market, those sales are getting eaten by the mirrorless market. Nikon and Canon are both doing quite poorly. I think we talked last year that Canon's numbers were kind of in the toilet as well. Not quite as bad as Nikon, but they're not doing great. And I just noticed that Canon has pulled the EOS M camera off of their Canon USA website. It's no longer there.
I didn't know that.
And they never released the M2 in North America. So, both of these big guys are having some troubles adapting to these changing markets. And I completely agree with Martin. I think that they will adapt and they'll be able to catch up, but most of the things that they have been doing for the last 4 or 5 years have just been evolutionary and reactionary. Right. They need to sort of take things a step forward and make a splash, make some waves and get attention.
Yeah, I mean they've been playing it safe. It kind of reminds me. You remember, you guys may be too young to remember this, but there's this. You remember Monty Python's Flying Circus? Remember that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, so do you remember? You remember the skit where they had the killer rabbit and they backed the rabbit into the corner and it would just lunge at people and rip their necks out? You know? Yeah. So these companies need to go into killer rabbit mode, right? So they're like backed into a corner. It's time to act irrationally and do something crazy at the end. So I'm going to put you both on the spot here. So if you are Martin, and I'm going to let you go first on this one. So you are the CEO of, or chairman of the board, or however they're structured over there in Tokyo, of Nikon corporate. People, try not to make eye contact with Martin when he comes in the room because he wields that much power. You can govern the direction that this company goes for Nikon. What's your next move? I mean, playing armchair quarterback, what should Nikon do, in other words, over the next 2 years or so in order to prove that they are the leader that they say they are?
Well, I think that both Nikon and Canon they've got to get something strong in the mirrorless market, and I think that their current Canon, like Don just said, pulling the M, that's just a part of it. I think what they need to do is to have a small-bodied, full-frame mirrorless camera, a strong one that's probably weatherproof as well, because people are moving, people are going over to the mirrorless market in droves,
Right.
and I think that they both need something really strong, maybe even a couple of a high-end and mid-range sort of mirrorless. And I think that Nikon also, we got to remember that although we're saying that Canon and Nikon are being a little bit reactive, we've got to remember that Canon actually released a whole range of video DSLR lenses, and the 1D. The 1D body was, the 1DX was also released for video, well, not video only, but pretty much a video camera. Right. So during this last few years, Canon have actually really moved into video DSLR in a big way. So they're not sitting on their hands quite as much as Nikon are, but they've got the they both really just need something really strong in the mirrorless market, and I think that it could even be, just like I say, a smallish DSLR, but take the mirror out and make it, just something. It needs to be small because the big attraction for mirrorless for everybody is the size and the weight. So it needs to be small, but I think that they could probably. I know that a lot of people would prefer, me included, if you're going to go to mirrorless, something full frame is really the way I would go. I won't go into mirrorless if I have to go to an APS-C or a smaller sensor. It's got to be full frame, and that, of course, might mean that they can develop a new range of lenses that has smaller backs, so that they're closer. They don't need to be that distance from the sensor.
Right. Right.
So I think that maybe a new range of lenses or a few key ones, but also there's obviously going to be an adapter so that you can use your existing lenses as well to make the step over, the crossover, more or less painful.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and I don't think, of course, again, we're playing armchair quarterback, but I don't think it's rocket science. You could look at what Sony's doing with their A7 and A7R and the new A7S, right? And the success that folks like Panasonic are enjoying with their GH4, the 4K, and Olympus with the OMD EM1. You could look at all the successes and look online and see what people love and hate and synthesize that into something irresistible, right? Yeah. And make that, and then sell it at a really attractive price, and and keep going. Don, what do you think? You're the CEO of Nikon right now. Or Canon for that matter? What do you do in order to ensure the future of your company going forward?
Well, I'll start by echoing Martin's sentiment about the mirrorless market. That's the fastest growing market that I can see right now, and the two big companies are really not playing ball in that court, so they need to do that for sure. And Martin was mentioning video, and Nikon released the Nikon DF, which apparently great camera, doesn't shoot video.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost Nikon anything to allow that to shoot video.
It probably cost them something to take it out of there.
It probably did, because the processors and the software and everything are already inclusive to those features. So it kind of makes me scratch my head and wonder what they're doing. But I like that kind of experimentation. In a different way, I like when companies produce a niche product that's destined to sell like 12 units just to test new technology. And you know what? Lytro coming out with their new camera, and there's some really interesting innovations there. What happens what happens if Canon or Nikon roll some of that technology into one of their cameras? They'll sell very few, but maybe that's going to be a stepping stone to a true revolution in this kind of technology, instead of just making it tweaks and fine-tuning things here and there and making them little bits better as we go forward. So I think that those splashes, even if they're not designed to sell units, can design to get people talking, and if any of those are successes, then that gets rolled into future products and everything gets better because of it. But that's risk, and these companies at this stage in the game are probably pretty risk averse.
Mm.
Yeah, and presumably both of you guys know how big companies operate, and how challenging it is to, like Martin, you were saying, how to turn that ship away from the iceberg. It's a big deal, consensus building inside, and the politics and all this stuff in order to get things done. It's sometimes an act of Congress to do that. These companies have been around. They've got an established market share. And when I say these companies, I'm talking Nikon and Canon specifically. But they've got an established user base of folks that are rabid fanboys about the products that they make, that are out there making great images. Canon has their new Bring It ad campaign. You may have seen that. So they're doing this stuff now. Is it going to be too late? Like Martin, you said, the onslaught of mirrorless is coming fast and furious. Mm-hmm. By the time they get their stuff together, is it going to be too late? By the time they figure out, okay, let's stop having meetings and actually make some action here. Hey, look, the mirrorless ship has sailed, 3 months ago. So what do you think?
I think it definitely is. I mean, it's not going to be too late, but I think that they've already lost the revenue and a lot of customers, because it's difficult. Once someone leaves and invests in a whole new lens system, they're not going to come back, not very easily.
You're right.
And that's why I'm saying it's got to be a killer. When they do release something in the mirrorless market, it's got to be killer. It's got to be enough to not only stop their current user base from jumping over to a different manufacturer's mirrorless. It's got to be enough to bring the ones they've already lost, the hordes that they've already lost, back. Right. But I actually, there was one other thing that I wanted to mention earlier and forgot. I think that there's also, I mean, probably both Nikon and Canon have a huge backlog of, or a huge stash of new functionality that they are holding back on with the cameras. That they've probably got a roadmap out 5 years, and they've got all sorts of killer things on the roadmap that they think, okay, we can do this. We can do the automatically exposed to the right. We can do the focus peaking. We can do all of that. Stick it in now, guys. If anyone from Canon's listening, this, remember the in Madagascar when was it the monkeys that they're in the suit, and one of them says, "If you have poo, fling it now." That's where we're at.
Yes,
that's where we're at. For Canon and Nikon, fling the poo.
I think we have a title for this episode of This Week in Photo. Thank you.
Put a few of those biggies in the sensor right now, in the camera right now, because you've got to, and that's the other thing. That's why I'm sort of thinking along two different tracks here.
Yeah.
Canon also need a big sensor camera. They've got the D800 has stole a lot of Canon users from a lot of people have moved over to Nikon for that, and Canon are sitting here at the moment with 22 at their max, 22 megapixels at their max. And I know that a lot of people, including you, Frederick, don't think that it's about megapixels, but the flow of users from Canon to Nikon for the D800 proves that a lot of people are thinking that. Yeah. Canon, you need a 36 plus, hopefully, maybe a little bit more, but you need a 36 plus megapixel camera as well.
Yeah. No, I agree with all that, especially the poo-flinging piece of that. That's freaking awesome. So, Don, do you agree with that business model, the Martin Bailey business plan of poo-flinging?
Yes, I'll get behind that. But these companies.
No pun intended.
Yeah, no pun intended. But these companies need to hit a product out of the park. They need to hit a home run from from a mirrorless standpoint. They have to come out with that killer product, and they have to storm the market. And just like Martin said, they got to get these people back. But it's also, they have to have something for the people buying their first camera to aspire to. Yeah. And people. Some people might still aspire to having the big, bulky, D4 or Canon 1D camera bodies, and those are the top of the food chains in there. And so people will see, okay, well, where can I grow as a photographer? And their delusions of grandeur will guide their path based on what entry-level products that they purchase.
Yeah.
And so if they don't have something in the mirrorless market, like at the top of whatever ladder that is, then nobody's going to buy anything from them in that product category. So start big and make sure that you make everybody aware that you are playing this game and that you're not just sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with both of you 100%. It's like act act bold and decisive and irrationally at this point because your competitors are acting bold and decisive and irrationally. So making safe decisions and incremental upgrades or changes to the cameras is, and when your competition is adding stuff like you're saying, Martin, focus peaking and all this other stuff, come on, it's time to play. I don't know. It's going to continue to get interesting, which is why we will continue to do TWiP and report on this stuff. So speaking of interesting and speaking of cameras and mirrorless cameras, here's another blurb that's in the notes, story number 2 that I want to talk about. So this is a story that was, let me read this for you. So it says, speaking of mirrorless cameras, they've been growing in popularity and continue to add more and more features to each generation that's released. One of the knocks against mirrorless cameras and one of the selling points for high-end DSLRs has been their ability to keep up with fast-moving action. That is, until now. The Camera Store posted a video featuring a field test they did pitting 4 mirrorless cameras against a Nikon D4s to see if their autofocus systems could compete with a high-end DSLR. The 4 mirrorless cameras involved in this test were the Sony a6000, the Olympus OMD EM1, the Panasonic GH4, and the Fuji X-T1. The results were very interesting, although the D4s still performed the best in real-world testing. All 4 mirrorless cameras kept up very well, with the GH4 coming out on top in terms of its autofocus performance. So, at thousands of dollars less, the performance gap between mirrorless and DSLR seems to be shrinking, which could mean the end of the DSLR may not be that far out. Martin, you're a DSLR shooter. You shoot the big cannons, the big guns, the big lenses. You need the fast focusing for those snow monkeys. What do you think of this test? It makes sense?
Yeah, yes and no. I think it makes a lot of sense that the people that are looking at mirrorless cameras, want to go into the mirrorless market, are going to find it invaluable if they shoot any kind of fast action. I mean, snow monkeys don't move that quick, but flying birds do. And when you turn on a boat and you've got an eagle flying towards you, you need this focus to snap in on it. And I think that looking at the tests, I don't think that would work still, because they were focusing on like motocross bikers that they could focus on for a while. They did some interesting tests where they would also focus on the dirt in the foreground and then focus on a bike in midair, and that probably simulates very much the same sort of thing. So, but even then, the guy was saying that they are they're still. I think the key point for me was towards the end of the video when he said that for the price point. I think the big thing is the price point. If you're prepared to spend $7,000 on a camera, you can go and get the D4s or the 1DX, and they are both at the top of the game when it comes to sports and wildlife. He also said that the blackout time when you're actually making the image with the mirrorless is so long that it actually makes it more difficult to track with your subject. But with the DSLR, at 10, well, the D4s is 11 frames per second. The 1DX is 12 frames per second. So at that speed, you don't even see the camera. See the mirror going up and down. You're seeing our brains, as Don was saying earlier, our brains do so much work for us that you don't even see that blackout. Your brain interpolates out the shutter delay out of there, so you just see a continuous image, right? Yeah. So the thing is that as it's not an apples to apples comparison, but what he said was that if you consider the $7,000, then you're going to have to go, if you're prepared to buy that, go for your 1DX or your D4s. But when you compare it to the same price bracket on the DSLRs, the mirrorless are now worlds ahead, and the mirrorless are actually beating the autofocus on the lower end DSLRs, the ones in similar price range, and it's only a matter of time before that's not going to be the case. I'm not sitting here thinking that I'm going to be a DSLR shooter forever because they're the best and all of this, because I still believe that they're the best right now in this generation. But look at where we were 2-3 years ago. There was nothing, nowhere near. The technology is coming on so fast. And these companies are probably being inundated with orders that they never really thought they were going to get because of this big influx of, you know, the hordes of people moving over. I would imagine that they've got a lot more R&D money than they thought they were going to have in the pocket as well.
Yeah.
So they're plowing a lot of that back into the development of new features and things, and improving this stuff. I agree, it's a matter of time. I think there's the price bracket thing that you need to keep in mind, but also even the top end, it's probably only a matter of time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's an exciting space, and it's like, you know, to throw an analogy at it, it reminds me of, like, you know, there's a story I read once. It was about the old technology of riding horses versus the newfangled technology of automobiles, and the people that rode the horses were like, you know what, that car is awesome and it can go places and get you there fast and all that stuff, but I need to cross that mountain over there. So my horse can help me cross that mountain. Can your car cross that mountain? You know. So, and that was right up until, you know, that vehicles could cross mountains, you know, and then the horse became antiquated. So you're right, Martin. So we stay in that. We use the tools that we need to get the job done, regardless of what they are. And then as soon as the technology presents itself to allow us to do what we need to do faster, better, with a higher quality, then we drop the money and jump to that. Don, do you agree with that, or do you like what Martin was saying about mirrorless versus DSLR?
Yeah, and you know, you look at the high-end digital SLR market when we're talking about multi-thousands of dollars of cameras.
Yeah.
Those people that would buy those cameras, I mean, you've got photojournalists, sports photographers, and the like, and there are fewer of these people today in relation to the number of photographers than there used to be. It's not a growing market, and while there will still be people to buy those cameras at those price points, there's less and less money going in that direction. And you look at, I think the GH4 does 4K video, does it not?
It does, yes.
Yeah, and you can't get a digital SLR for less than $8,000 or $9,000. The Canon 1DC is about the only one that does 4K video. And so when those features of autofocus and things that people care about for general picture taking reach on par with the digital SLRs of the same price point, and they have all of these extra features in them, what are you going to choose? I mean, it's a no-brainer at that point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's exciting. I mean, when you abstract all this other stuff away, news, complexity, irrational exuberance about a particular brand or camera, you know, it just comes down to we as photographers and image makers are the beneficiaries of all this stuff, right? Because it's as these guys with their giant budgets fight it out and worry about grabbing our dollars, we sit back and wait for them to please us with the latest camera, and then we can make our decision, go get it or not. You know, it's a good place to be in for us at this point in time. Do you guys think that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, as if you'd say no, you don't. All right, guys, let's move on to this next story, a controversial story here. So here's what Bruce wrote in the notes. He says, it's grad season across the country, and thousands of students are getting their grad photos taken by professional photographers. But according to Jesse Chin, a Facebook employee who works in the photos department, grads shouldn't have to pay for their photographs when it's so easy to steal them. Chin documented a step-by-step instruction on his blog on how to circumvent right-click protection on proofing site galleries and then remove the proofing watermark. The post was actually created a couple of years ago, but it's been recently picked up by a couple of popular sites, prompting outrage, obviously, from the photographic community, resulting in the post being taken down. So, Facebook engineer. So Facebook is no stranger to controversy or this kind of stuff, especially when it comes to images with its acquisition of Instagram and frequent tweaking of its terms of service and all that good stuff, essentially saying that they can use our images for anything if we upload them to the service. Don Komarechka, when you look at this, you know, you're a social media powerhouse with gazillions of people following you and hanging on your every keystroke. When you see articles like this, what do you think? I mean, obviously it sucks, but what do you think as a pro photographer seeing someone documenting how to commit a crime from a company like Facebook?
Well, okay, so it's not difficult to do this. You know, if you've got any know-how in Photoshop and knowing your way around the web, he didn't invent this process, and I'm sure many people have done it before and many people afterwards. The fact that he works at Facebook, particularly on their photos team, raises a few alarm bells, because that sort of shows me the kind of draconian attitude that they have towards the possession of images, and that they should all, you know, belong to you regardless of who the actual owner is. But you know, these grads, and I mean, I can't wrap my head around this. If you are walking into a studio and you have a professional photographer with all of the setup, and they are there taking your picture, what part of that makes an equation in your head that this image is free? I mean, you have to make an appointment. You've got to go there. This is usually an independent person, not somebody that works for you know, the school or wherever it is that you're graduating from. And so the idea alone that you should take that image for free, I think, is faulty, and I'm sure all photographers will agree to that. And posts like this perpetuate that idea and stick that in more people's minds. And so I think that is the worst part of it. It's not necessarily that you can do it, but it's giving you the, I guess, the moral pat on the back saying that this is okay, go ahead and do it. And you know, the guy, Jesse Chen, I think was his name, works at Facebook, and this was posted 2 years ago, and that's when he started working at Facebook, and he did his internship there a year beforehand. And so, you know, he had been working at Facebook and then was hired onto Facebook while he still had these attitudes towards, you know, copyright and ownership of images and that kind of thing. So
that's tantamount to being an endorsement of your ideas. If you wrote this before you were an employee and then we christened you as an employee after this was published, then it kind of says, yeah, all right, we're okay with that sort of thing, right?
Yeah. So it upsets me.
Yeah, yeah. Clearly, I mean, it upsets me too. But when I look at this, you know, there's parts of my brain are lighting up. The photographer part turns red. Obviously, it's like, you know, this sucks. But then the I want to say citizen and, you know, equal rights for all part of my brain lights up and says, well, this is kind of like if someone decided they wanted to post bomb-making materials online. They're not committing a crime, but they're describing in detail how to commit the crime. Are they culpable? And should they be punished, or should we look down on them for writing this information, especially, like you said, Don, it's not like it's rocket science to do this to begin with. You know, playing devil's advocate, was he wrong by just posting it, notwithstanding the fact that he worked at Facebook? Martin, what do you think?
I think that it's, you know, it is inexcusable. I'm not sure that I would go as far as to say that he should lose his job, but I think that there needs to be at least a statement. I mean, it wouldn't bother me if he did because of this, because it does show a gross lack of respect for copyright laws and the rights of photographers. But I think it's there needs to be at least a really strong comment from Facebook. As to, you know, how they're going to prevent this kind of attitude in at least in their photo related development teams. But I think that there's really a lot of so many people out there. I mean, the people that moan, not moan, that's the wrong word. The people that complain about copyright infringements most are of course photographers. The people in the street, they don't really care so much about that. And the general attitude is, I mean, it's like I remember posting a series of images on Google Plus maybe a year or so ago, and some guy pipes up saying, "Are you crazy posting this online? You could sell these." And I'm like, "Yeah, and I am." Yeah. But what do you mean? You think that because I've posted them here, they're free, that you can take them? I said they're not. You know, they're still my photos. I'm showing them you know, but they're still copyrighted to me. And if you take them, you're breaking the law. Yeah. And he just shut up and went away. But that's the attitude. a lot of people think that once you post it online, it's free for all. And that's the, you know, I think there needs to be sort of, there probably never will be because there's nothing in it for them. But there needs to be some sort of education, or even government-based or at schools. We need to educate people on copyright and make sure that it's general knowledge and not just knowledge that's shared by photographers that need to keep a roof over their head.
I agree, Martin, and I was just thinking I've got the perfect idea for Facebook right here. It's trivial for them to figure out if an image has a proof watermark across the front of it. I'm sure there's algorithms that they could design that would be able to detect that on upload. So would it be then logical and ethical to then give somebody a little warning message? I mean, not necessarily stop them, but say, you know, do you own this photograph? And give a brief description about what these proofs are, what they mean, and confirm that they are the owner of that photograph. And give them a little reminder that, yeah, this is intellectual property here. You might be stealing this photograph if there's a proof on it and you didn't pay for it. And I think that that Facebook should do this. I mean, it's very easy to Photoshop these things out. A lot of people will just steal them anyhow because they don't know any better, and that's a perfect place to educate people.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up, Don. That's the other piece of it, because Martin, you were sort of leaning towards the people, you know, that want to do this being ignorant or nefarious or, you know, whatever their motivations are. But when you look at it from the standpoint of, okay, maybe they're not ignorant. Let's take the example of, you know, the MP3 revolution. Remember back in the Napster days when folks were stealing MP3s and saying, well, you know what, I can't really afford to get that anyway, but I want to enjoy that artist's music, and it's so easy to get it, I'm going to get it. You know, that's hot song I keep hearing on the radio over and over again, and I can just go click and get it and put it in my little device or play it on my computer. Path of least resistance is gone, so why not do it? You know, no one will ever know. And you fast forward to today, it's the same for some folks, you know, especially when you're thinking of the kids that don't have a whole lot of money, or even the parents of these kids that don't have a whole lot of money, presumably. Path of least resistance. Hey, we got these proofs. They're sitting in front of us. And Mr. Chin there at Facebook, a reputable company, has just showed us how to get these so that we don't have to pay for it. Hey, I could save $800 in a couple of minutes. Why don't I do that? I mean, right? I mean, that's kind of what would happen in the real world, Martin, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a brilliant analogy there with the, you know, the MP3 thing. I know that I actually went back, and that people will probably laugh when I tell them this, but I actually went back and bought some of the albums that I liked, that I, you know, a few years ago when, I mean, there were places where you could go. I never did the Napster thing and all of that because I've been a photographer so long, I do respect the copyright laws probably more than most people. I've always bought all of my software and stuff like that. And I think that you know, a few years ago though, I did have, I think, 3 or 4 CDs that I grabbed from a repository in an office somewhere. Someone said, hey, you've got to listen to this. And the thing is, though, I grabbed like these 3 or 4 CDs, and I actually listened to one of them so much that when iTunes came out, I bought it. Just because I wanted to pay the person for the pleasure they've given me. But I think I'm certainly in the minority in doing that. But it's a really good analogy. You know, people, you know, sometimes they know it's wrong, but it's just like you say, the path of least resistance. But I have a friend, Landon Michelson, who used to use a phrase that locks only keep honest people out. And that's, you know, that to me, I mean, obviously here in Japan, in the countryside, almost nobody locks their door. And even when I was a kid in England, we didn't lock the door. But then you'd start to hear more burglaries and people would lock the doors. But do locks really stop burglars getting in? No, if they want your stuff, they're going to get in anyway.
Right.
So, you know, that seems to be where we are at the moment with copyright as well.
Yeah. I mean, that MP3 era was interesting because I remember, you know, I'm not naming any companies, but I remember some companies that I may or may not have worked at that had on the network like terabytes of music. I mean, I had probably like iTunes database level of music. Anything you could possibly want was there. And I remember there's a consumer electronics store around here called Fry's Electronics that people would just run out to Fry's and buy the biggest hard drive they could possibly get and just set that thing copying down. You know, come back a couple days later, 25%, almost got it, you know. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. Path of least resistance, and you know, people will find a way. If they want it, they will get it. So I think the onus is on us as photographers. Like Trey Ratcliffe, you know, he posts giant, beautiful, huge landscape images online daily, right, with no watermark. And I remember when I first started talking to Trey, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You posted that. I mean, it's like people could print that if they wanted to and get a really nice print out of that. And I don't know if his stance is still the same, but I would imagine it is. But he said something around the lines of, you know what, certain people are always going to steal, but I'm counting on the people that don't steal to offset the people that do steal, right? So, you know, I'm not going to play in that glass is half empty world. I'm going to play in the glass is half full world. Converse to some other photographers that I know that are very litigious, and if they see you even looking at their image wrong, you'll get a bill in the mail. So,
you know, the thing is there as well, exactly in the same way that Trey thinks on that. With me, I not only went back and bought a couple of the CDs that I did like. The CDs that I made a copy of actually led me to buy more music from that artist later. You know, as I started to follow them, and as they they released later work, I'm thinking, oh, they've got a new album out, and I'd go off and I'd buy it. So I mean, there is something to be said for actually allowing people. Microsoft did it for years, in China especially. They would turned a blind eye to Windows being copied. I mean, in China, you can buy Windows for either $1 or $4 or 50 cents or $1, and the only difference is the quality of the DVD it's been copied onto. And that's still the case. But a few years ago, Microsoft said, okay, well, now we're going to actually put online activation, and we're going to make it a lot harder for people to buy this. And whether it worked in China or not, I don't know, but what that's going to force is, it's going to force the issue of actually paying for the software. And if you've got to the point where you love an operating system or a piece of software so much, and there's no way you can get around paying for it, you've got two choices: stop using it or pay for it.
Yep.
Or find a hack that will still allow you to circumvent the new code. But
right.
I mean, that's kind of what it is. Fill the market with a product. Turn a blind eye to the theft and piracy for a while, and then figure out how to monetize it.
I think Adobe did that too, although I'm just looking at that from the outside. When I was going through high school and what have you, if you wanted a copy of Photoshop, I mean, anybody had one. You just have to ask somebody for the disc, and away you go.
Yeah.
And so because the copy protection was there, but so easy to just to circumvent that. And now it's become such an easy path of access to actually pay for the software and get it legitimately that's almost the easier way to do it.
Right.
And so I think that's a pretty solid way about it. And to your point earlier, Frederick. I've started uploading full resolution images as well, because if somebody is going to steal it, well, then they're going to steal the low resolution one anyhow. If they're going to print it, well, if they're going to go and print it themselves, they never would have come to me anyhow to begin with. And so if they do come to me and want a print, that's great. I'm more than happy to make that, sign the print, and ship it off to them and have a conversation. And so they're buying not just the artwork, but they're buying sort of that, this person, I want to support this person. I love their artwork. It's not just an image to these people. And if they're just stealing it, then that's all it is, and that's all it will ever be.
Yeah, it reminds me of, you remember when iTunes first launched, right? It launched obviously with I forget how many millions of tracks in there, but they were all DRM'd, which made them hard to move around. And I remember Steve Jobs on stage at a keynote saying something about they were launching iTunes to make an easy way for people to acquire music legitimately, right? Because back then I guess the antagonist in the whole music industry fight was Napster. They were in court at the time and all this. So Apple comes in, negotiates with the nervous music companies to, hey, let us give you a way to distribute. People are going to get your music digitally. They want it digitally. So we're going to give them a way to get it and pay for it, and you'll get paid. Imagine that, So they put that. And then going back to what I was saying earlier about that frog in the pot analogy, over time things shifted. Prices went up, DRM came off, and now where we have DRM-free, high quality, 128-bit music that we can download and move around freely. And still, they're making gazillions of dollars. Apple's market cap, I think I checked it yesterday, was like 500 and something billion dollars. And Google's is 300 and something billion dollars. It's ridiculous, right?
And the artists can still afford to make new music, and the world continues to spin. You know, I mean, it's not like it completely destroyed these artists' lives. If anything, it changed the the recording industry so that those companies are hoarding less money because there's less going directly to them. And I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah, love it. Awesome stuff, guys. What a great conversation. All right, guys, let's move on to the listener Q&A. This is the segment where you guys get to answer a question that has been at the top of one of our listeners' minds. And Martin, I think this question might be targeted at you. And Don, I want you to chime in on this as well. It says, David Foggin from our G Plus community page, which, by the way, has surpassed the 7,000 member mark. So thank you, guys. He says, hey guys, I'm looking for suggestions for a photo printer that's good at both black and white and color. And he misspelled color, Martin. You see that? That's why I say it's free. He says, it must be less than $600. I was looking at the Epson Artisan 1430, but it appears to have a color cast on black and white photos. The ability to do A3 Plus would be an advantage. Martin, you got like, what, 30 printers behind you in that room? Which one should he pick up?
Yeah, I'm actually, I mean, I had a quick look at the Epsons that I know that he mentioned an Epson. I had a quick look at the prices for the ones that I thought might be suitable, but they were actually well over $600. But what I found was, if I was to replace the printer behind me, the old 9500 Canon, I would replace it with a Pixma Pro 1 from Canon, and they retail at $900. But until the end of June, there's a $300 rebate.
Perfect.
And there's an instant, so it takes it down to $599. So the Pro 1, why I would suggest this printer is because it's got 12 color ink. It's got 12 inks and a whole set of black photo matte, photo gloss for black and white, and gray inks. So and these are actually big cartridges, so you're not going to be replacing them every, like the little tiny 3 picoliter cartridges that you can buy. These are good size cartridges.
Good.
They're individual cartridges, so you don't, when the red goes, you don't have to throw the green and the blue and everything else away. So that's one, and you can get that for $600 at the moment. And the second one, the next one down from that, is the Canon Pixma Pro 10, and that is, let me just check, that's $600 right there in the store, but there's a $200 rebate on that as well. So if you want that, you can get it for $400, and that's a 10 color printer. And so, and again, it has both gloss and matte blacks and the gray ink cartridge. So I would recommend. I mean, I'm a Canon printer user. I used to use Epson. There's nothing wrong with them. They're actually in some ways better than Canon printers. But I think that the main thing at the moment is that Canon is still climbing the hill on printers. Epson are at the top looking down, and Canon are still climbing the hill. And that's why you won't find Epson giving big rebates and things like that. And yet Canon are saying, oh, well, we need to climb this hill, so here's an extra $200. Plus printers are like the razor blade modeling model. You sell the printer at a loss because you know you're going to make hundreds, thousands of dollars over the next few years on inks. So that would be my recommendation. The Pro 1 or the Pro.
And it always makes sense. I mean, to go with the number 2, the Underdog. Remember what was that? What was that company? Remember, I think it was Hertz, the car rental company. And he said their marketing slogan for a while there, I think this was like 7 years ago, was "We're number 2, we try harder." So it's brilliant. You don't want the number 1 guy; they're lazy. Get number 2. They're gonna work for you harder. Cool. All right, Don Komarechka, you have anything to add to that on the printer question?
Well, Martin covered it pretty well, but if you're looking at other options too, and if people are listening to this well after the fact and those rebates aren't in place, look for any printer that will have that plethora of ink tanks, because you want to have at least one gray ink in the bunch, and that's going to give you much better black and white prints, because if you don't have a dedicated gray tank, then it has to use other colors to substitute, and you're always going to find at least some kind of a cast. Yes, you can calibrate it, but you shouldn't have to, if you want to get those colors to be, at least 90% of the way there. I mean, calibrating things always makes things better on any printer, and you can get rid of a lot of that stuff simply by calibrating it.
Yeah.
But if you can get at least one gray ink tank, I think when you've got up to 12 ink tanks, there might be two, and then you've got your two blacks. Then you're pretty much guaranteed some good black and white prints without those color casts that you've been reading about.
Love it. And Martin, isn't there an ebook somewhere on craft and vision on printing that this listener might want to go grab?
Yeah. If you go to Craft and Vision, there's actually, if you use the shortcode mbp.ac/mbcv for Martin Bailey on Craft and Vision, mbcv, that'll take you to my Craft and Vision page, and in there there's a little book called Making the Print that tells you all about this.
Awesome.
But I'm actually, I mean, it's strange because I'm one of the photograph articles that I'm writing at the moment is literally part of it is covering how to get rid of color casts in black and white. The issue 9, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, and we'll have my butt kicked if I'm not. But issue 9 of Photograph is going to be a black and white special, and so I'm actually writing an article for the next issue at the moment, and that's about black and white printing. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. I'll tell you, I'm diving into black and white more and more lately. After I just got back from New Zealand a couple of weeks ago, and of course I have a folder of images that I'm going to process. And timely enough, Brian Matias over at Google sent me over the Nik collection, which is got Silver Effects Pro in there, which is mind blowing when it comes to editing. It takes a lot for a Photoshop guy to get his brain around the control point piece of it, but man, that thing is crazy. The things that you can do with it. Yeah,
powerful software.
Yeah, definitely have to check that out.
Yeah.
Nik Silver Effects Pro and the Analog Effects Pro suite that they just released.
That's pretty cool as well.
Yeah. The whole thing is just, I've been diving into YouTube videos on their site, just going like, what? I can do that? This software can create a mask like that? I can never do that.
I did a whole series as an exercise last week, just as an aside here. I did a whole series of wildlife wet plate collodion photos, and it's like, I mean, of course, there's no way. I mean, you couldn't get the. I mean, it's birds in flight and things like that.
Yeah,
it's gimmicky, but I actually really liked the 10 photographs that I made. It was good, and that was with the not analog
analog
effects. Analog effects. Yeah, it's fun software.
Yeah, it is crazy. It's definitely a different way of approaching photo editing and post processing than what we're used to with even Lightroom and Aperture and Camera Raw and Photoshop. It's just completely different new way of looking at stuff. So I kind of like it. All right, guys, before we jump into the picks of the week, I want to thank another one of our sponsors for this episode of This Week in Photo, and that's our good friends over at lynda.com. Okay, let's jump into our picks of the week segment. Remember, you guys, your pick can be anything as long as it is somehow related to photography. Martin, I'm going to let you go first. What is your pick of the week?
Okay, so my pick of the week is David Duchovny's new book, A Beautiful Anarchy, and this book is the new essential reading on not only photography but the creative life. It's a paperback. It's not a pretty photos book. There's the only photo in the book is on the cover, but it's incredible. I reviewed it a couple of weeks ago as in preparation for an interview that I just released on my blog. But it's incredible. It's like the new Bible of creativity, and it's not just about photography. Sometimes it's not even remotely about photography. It's about how to live a creative life, and it's kind of like one of those success books, but not in a corny way. It's actually, you feel as though you're being empowered and you're being given the courage to do some of the things that most people would love to do. So if you're interested in living a creative life, and by creativity in the book, David says, raising kids is creative. There's a lot of, like running a business. All of this stuff is creative. It's not just actual art, But you know, if you're a potter, if you're a sculptor, it doesn't really matter. A creative life, anyone that wants to lead a creative life, or in any way, should read this book. It should be like essential reading. But I've literally just put a blog post out. It's an hour and 20 minutes discussion with David about A Beautiful Anarchy, and you've got to listen to it. It's one of the most inspiring conversations I've had. I would go as far as saying not only one of the most inspiring conversations I've had with David, but one of the most inspiring conversations I've ever heard. So
wow.
you know, the book is amazing. You've got to get it, but listen to the interview as well. And
So
actually,
it's an audio interview then.
it's an audio interview. But I mean, you can get straight to the interview at mbp.ac/424 for episode 424. But there are links to the book in there as well. But really, it's an incredible book. You've got to read it.
Excellent, cool. What a great pick. Perfect. All right, Don, you gotta top that one, man. Come on, what's your pick of the week?
It's funny because I'm going to sound like a broken record here, because I've got a photo book, and this one is called Dialogue with Photography, and this book follows along very similar lines. This was published in I think 1979 was when it was originally published, and it's a conversation, a collection of interviews that were originally published in the magazine Camera. Around that same era, that interviews sort of the lives of photographers from that era in the photographic world, and sort of how they became photographers, what's inspired them, how their careers were shaped, and that kind of stuff. So it's sort of those hands-on discussions with these people. And yes, photography has changed quite a bit, but the essence of it, you know, being creative and all of that, is still all the same. And how you become a creative person in a society that might not necessarily cater to that is some of the discussions that are going through that book. And so I've only read, I should have read more of this because it's been sitting on my desk for such a long time. I've only read about 40 pages, but it's inspiring. And so I picked it up for $10 at a used bookstore. I think you can get it online for about the same. And I think that they might have a newer version of it as well. But you know, those kinds of photo books that don't actually have any pictures or how-to, you know, tutorials and things, those are so valuable for somebody that maybe you feel like you're lacking creativity or inspiration. Pick up one of either this book for a couple of dollars, or David Duchemin's new book, and just sit down and read, and I think you'd be a better photographer for it, or better creative in any way.
Love it, love it. Feed the other side of your brain instead of just, you know, putting the candy on top of it with the beautiful visual imagery all the time. I love it. Cool. All right, guys. So my pick of the week is, you know, it's somewhat photography related. So I recently discovered a YouTube. So as you guys may know, I'm a big fan of photography, obviously, but also marketing and psychology and the business aspects of how all this stuff works and how people can, you know, make money from doing the stuff that they're so passionate about. So I recently discovered the YouTube channel of this woman. Her name is Marie Forleo. You may have heard of her because she's got a gazillion followers on YouTube already. But if you haven't, I'll put a link to her channel and her site in the show notes. But she does these very well produced videos on the topic of marketing and creativity and motivation, and you know, just how to kick yourself in the butt to get what you need to get done to get where you're trying to go. And she's got this refreshing sort of real personality. She's a Jersey girl who doesn't mince words and is not afraid to, you know, drop an expletive here and there, but you know, she gets the job done. She's pretty, she gets up there, articulate, insanely smart, does a quick 10-minute, you know, either discussion about a particular topic or an interview, and then boom, it's magic. So I'm addicted to her channel. I'm trying to catch up, and you know, she keeps putting more videos out. So I doubt if I'll ever catch up. So definitely check it out. Once again, her name is Marie Forleo, and you just search for that on YouTube or Google, for example, and you'll find her right away. So good stuff. All right, guys, we are at the end of another episode of TWiP. I want to thank our sponsors for you know, helping us keep the show going, and also if you're watching the show or listening to it, or actually if you're listening to the show on the podcast feed, stay tuned for an interview with the wonderfully talented Renee Robin. I sat down with her in a Google Hangout a little bit ago and just chatted about her process, how she learned to be so insanely good at Photoshop, what inspires her, all this kind of stuff. She, again, another refreshing personality, someone who knows their stuff and is, humble yet confident. So yeah, definitely give that a listen. And if you want to watch that interview, just head over to my YouTube channel and you'll see the video there. Or, this is the blog post that this episode is embedded in. You'll be able to watch the video there as well. So Martin Bailey, where can the audience go to check in with you, sign up for your workshops, and, throw poo?
Fling poo.
Okay, fling it, yes.
So, yeah, martinbaileyphotography.com. There are links to everything along the top there, so you can get to me over there.
All roads lead to martinbaileyphotography.com. Cool. And Mr. Don Komarechka, what about you?
Easiest place to find me is doncom.ca, and I'm most active posting new images on Google+, and all the links are there. So if you want to strike up a conversation, hit me up on Google+, and check out what I'm up to on doncom.ca.
Wonderful. All right, and audience, also be sure to check out our All About the Gear series that I'm doing with Mr. Doug K. We're releasing new episodes of that show all the time. We've recently reviewed the Fuji X-T1. I think that one goes live in a couple of weeks. We've done pretty much, most of the cameras that you'd be interested in about right now. So definitely head over there. You can find the link to that from thisweekinphoto.com right in the nav bar there. There's a little link that says shows, and all the shows that we're currently producing will show up right in there. And if you are looking to touch base with me personally, Frederick Van Johnson, you can always find me at my personal site. That's at frederickvan.com. And with that, it is time to take that lens cap off.